In case you're wondering, yes, we are returning with the Chain of Acheron tonight, 7 o'clock Pacific. There is a link in the doobly-doo to the Twitch channel. My friend Phil was nice enough to take over while I took a 3-week hiatus, and so we've been playing D&D in his game, and lots of folks had fun watching that and were wondering whether or not there was going to be a campaign diary for Phil's game. And Phil wasn't super comfortable doing, a huge, long direct-to-camera retelling of what he did. So instead, we got together and I interviewed him much the same way as I did my friend Jim. I had a lot of fun. I think Phil did too. I hope you have as much fun watching it. I will see you in just a few hours for the return of the chain. Welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Matt Colville. I am joined today by my friend and my former boss and now former DM twice and current player in the Chain of Acheron game, Phil Robb. Phil is an illustrator, character designer, executive art director, co-owner at Turtle Rock Studios, where I used to work. And he was nice enough to come by today. We just wrapped up a 3-episode story in his campaign, Into the Bowels of Valengard. And whereas normally I do a campaign diary, I thought it would be neat to just talk to Phil about his history with the game and then also about how he thinks the last 3 episodes went. How long have you been playing D&D, Phil?
So it would have been, I think we started dabbling in the red starter box when I was in, I want to say 6th or 7th grade.
Right. And what year would have that been?
That would have been, let's see here, when you're in 6th grade, you're what, 12?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would have been 81, 82.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And how did you find out about D&D? Like, what was your first exposure?
So my friend who lived up the street, one of his friends got him the red box for his birthday.
Cool.
Right. And so we were just looking through it and like,
you had no idea what it was.
This is cool.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we looked at the books and we kind of dabbled in it a little bit, but it wasn't real clear to us how to play.
Right.
But then another friend of mine who's had an older sister, they had like a pretty hardcore group.
Nice.
And he played with them. And so he invited me over. And that was the first time I actually got to play. And they had this big ass castle made, right? And they did it with minis and everything like that, right? So yeah, I was like, whoa, that was cool. And then we went back, right? And I think my friend actually just left the red box at my house. And I just started, messing with it. And eventually we all got together and started playing, and we got the action, the hard books.
Right. Yeah. The hardcovers.
The first, it was first edition for sure. And then just kind of went from there.
Were you already a nerd at that point? Were you reading science fiction, fantasy?
Those early years, I didn't like to read because everything that I had to read was shit. School made you read. You got to read this.
Yeah.
I think the first book that I read all the way through and really found that I enjoyed reading was The Hobbit.
Yeah, that's great.
So I was stuck in the library.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I going to do? So I found it was that old hardcover Hobbit book that was like green and blue.
I remember that.
It had the super primitive like striped drawings on it.
Yep.
I just started reading it. And then I ended up taking it home and finishing it. And then Dragonlance Saga, like that was.
There we go. Dragonlance. Classic
right.
Gateway drug.
No, I mean, I went back and I read that first novel.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's pretty like simple.
Yeah. I think these days it would be young adult.
But for me then, I was like, holy shit, reading's is actually fun. And so then at that point I like devoured every like D&D, TRS.
TSR, yeah.
TS, was it TS?
TSR.
TRS is us.
That's right. I do the same thing. I do the same thing all the time, yeah. People get confused.
I mean, I read like the Icewind Dale trilogy and all that stuff. And then, from there started branching out. Like I got some just books that I found in Dragon Magazine and read like The Misenchanted Sword.
I love Lawrence Watt Evans. Yeah. With A Single Spell and A Misenchanted Sword were two books he wrote. They're great.
Yeah. Sort of worked my way into the grittier stuff later on.
So D&D, your first experiences with D&D sort of led you down the path of getting into science fiction and fantasy.
Well, I always liked Star Wars.
Yeah, sure, right? Of course. That's cool.
I mean, that because as a kid, I went from loving dinosaurs to loving Batman and Robin and running home every day to watch that cheesy
the 60s
thing. But I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, right? Of course. Yeah.
Ultraman and that kind of stuff.
I remember Ultraman,
then when Star Wars came out, we went and we saw it in the theater like that opening week. And I think that was the first movie that like I paid attention to as a kid the whole way through, where I was like riveted and actually watching the story and not just watching the cool parts and then doing this shit.
And then like, hey mom, what's exactly. Yeah. Getting distracted or whatever.
Right.
When did you become interested in drawing? Like, was that before, during, or after?
Before. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Like when I was little.
Oh, so by the time you were exposed to D&D, you could already draw.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
I'd already been drawing a lot. Like, in fact, I had these, I don't know if you remember them in the 80s, they sold these things called nothing books. It was basically like a little hardback book,
right?
That just had blank paper inside.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was drawing. I had this like comic, right, that I was drawing. It was more like a 12-year-old's version of a graphic novel.
Yeah.
And they were like these anthropomorphic dogs, kind of guys, and they were going on adventures. Like I had them going on like Indiana Jones style adventures and stuff like this.
Do you still have these books?
Yeah, they're horrible. I would never show them. They're embarrassing. I mean, for a 12-year-old.
Well, of course, because you're a kid. Yeah.
Right. But still. But then you can see, like, I think I get into the second nothing book, and you can see where I started playing D&D, because all of a sudden Drows show up in the story, right? Yeah. And they get zapped into another world and all this stuff. And it's pretty funny.
When did you go from being a player, because your first experience was as a player, to wanting to get behind the screen?
I think it was almost immediately.
Really?
Right? Because nobody else wanted to run.
So was that the impetus was, well, if I want to play, then I have to run? Or was there some kind of desire on your part to run just?
I think I was cool with it, right? Yeah. I mean, going back to like enjoying telling stories, right? And writing those silly graphic novels that I was doing, that gives you a chance to do that. But I mean, to be honest, like those first couple years of playing D&D was chaos.
Of course, yeah.
Right. Like your adventures were basically like, stupid.
Yeah.
Right. And then just a bunch of fighting in. And then like, because we were a bunch of teenagers, right. Or, early teenagers.
Yeah.
Our nights always devolved into everyone fighting. You know what I mean? Like,
you mean like against each other?
Yeah. Yeah. And,
sure. Of course. I remember that. We did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a lot of cheating, and, folks would go home right from that night, and then they'd come back the next week with magic items, that like hadn't been given. Where'd you get that? Oh, I played in a friend's campaign, and we all did it. So it was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But yeah, so it was a lot of silliness. And then I think when we really got serious about like trying to do role playing was in college.
Oh, okay. Right? Do you remember, apart from D&D, what other games you played?
We played a little bit of Paranoia.
Oh yeah. Classic.
We did a stint with Twilight 2000. I still have the Gamma World box set.
Yeah, Gamma World's awesome.
We played a little bit of that. We always came back to D&D though.
Yeah.
In college we played a little bit of Call of Cthulhu. Those were the big ones. Like by the time Shadowrun came around and like Vampire the Masquerade, I think we were just like, nah, D&D, right?
Sure, yeah. When I met you, which was 2011, when was the last time you had played D&D?
I want to say when I was in EA, which would have been when I was working at EA.
Yeah.
That would have been from 98 to 2003.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it had been quite a few years.
Yeah. And do you
I still bought all the books.
Oh, you keep up with what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I've got every edition of D&D on my bookshelf, right? I've got the 3.5 edition. I don't think I've ever even opened them.
Really? Are you serious? That's crazy. Yeah. That's funny. That's because there's a huge kind of back to the dungeon, back to old school play.
Well, I didn't have a group at that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like getting people, my group that I played with in college, they're back east, right? They're spread to the wind. Playing online was, even though I don't do it now, it was not a thing that you could do then. And everyone at work was busy. We were crunching like all the time. Right. So there wasn't really, time to get like a steady group going.
The campaign that we just wrapped up with the three episode arc that we did is kind of the sequel to the first one you ran.
Yeah, kind of.
Right. Because it takes place in Balangard, which is a place that we did.
I wouldn't call it a sequel. I would call it like a spin-off.
That's cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, because it doesn't have the same characters. Right. The sequel presumably would have the same characters. Right. Yeah. Right. This is definitely a spin-off of that first game. Are you aware when you sit down to prep for the first time that last campaign that we played in, are you aware of having a style? That there is a kind of, if somebody asked you, what kind of DM are you?
I don't know. I don't know that I'd be able to answer that question, because I mean, I try to keep it flexible, right? I want the world to be believable and to a certain degree gritty,
right,
and brutal, right? But then I don't want it to be like dour either. Right?
I mean, humor.
You got to have that humor. So I don't know, what would you call that? Like,
well, I would say like, well, certainly your setting is very low fantasy, right? In the sense that there's not a lot of high magic. And so you tweeted, or you responded to somebody on Twitter where they were complimenting you on the amount of work you do on the ecology of your dungeon. And you said something I thought was brilliant, which was, you have to believe in it if I'm going to sell it to the players.
Right.
And so there's definitely you spend a lot of time and thought on how does this work? The practicality of how are there these creatures down there? What do they live off of?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I was thinking going back, I wish that, because it's called Into the Bowels of Valengard, right? You went into the bowels of Valengard and then you quickly shot out its asshole in like someplace completely different.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I should have spent more time in the bowels of Valengard, but given, because it was kind of a compressed.
Yeah, it was only supposed to be. Originally, it was going to be two weeks.
Well, not only that, but it was like we decided to not even a week before
that we were going to do it at all.
So I had to throw it together, and I couldn't. At least in the time that I had allotted myself, I had a really hard time coming up with a believable ecosystem to be living down in the bowels of this ancient hold. You know what I mean? So that's why, I was like, okay, well, let's go with the rust monsters, right? Because it's believable that they would tunnel into a mine because they're looking for metal. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they would leave some sort of tunnel that would take you to another part of, the place where you guys went is still I don't know if you'd call it kingdom, fiefdom, thaindom, whatever of Valengard, right? But it's a different part.
Right. It's not literally directly below the castle or whatever, the keep.
Right. Yeah. I think it was like about 2 miles northwest when all was said and done, all the
tunnels that we went through.
Yeah. Exactly. But, like I said, it's true. Like, I feel like if you're going to put something down there that's alive, certainly you can put Undead down there, but
sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think my world is there yet.
Where there's
like masses of
populations of undead running around.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good, interesting point, because when we first started playing at Turtle Rock in your game, you gave us the player's guide to Sanctuary, which is your campaign setting.
Right.
And this is something people on Twitter have asked about. We'll put a link in the doobly-doo to Phil's handout. It's like 32 pages. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But like, how long did it take you to write that?
How long did I work on that? I want to say like 2 months.
And was it something you created for that campaign that we played at Turtle Rock in like 2015 or 16?
Yeah,
Or was it a world you had from when you were younger?
No, it wasn't a world.
Oh, okay.
I made it for that, based on the idea that I wanted to try and introduce a world that it's not, I wouldn't say it's a low magic world, but like magic is sort of,
it's almost no magic.
It's below the surface.
Right. Yeah.
And the whole idea is that throughout the campaign, right, you guys are going to experience this awakening, right? Yeah. Where because the god of magic, right, is one of the slumbering gods, right? Cool. And the idea is that like the slumbering gods are waking up and shit's happening because of that, right? So the idea is that, like your character was the first true healing character that could truly magically heal in living memory.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's so people who don't know, the first campaign I was playing Rugar Steelhaven, a dwarven cleric. And one of the great things about it was whenever regular people would see me use any prayer, cast any spell, they would be blown away. And as a result, I would attract like converts and stuff, but also people who were threatened by that would run away and have to like go report that the stuff was happening. So that was one of the really cool tensions of it.
Like, I don't know if you remembered him, but when you guys got to the gates of Valengard in this one, in this past one, you were met by a guy named Garrett.
Right. No, I remember
Brother Garrett.
Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember who he was?
I remember meeting that guy, but I don't remember who. I remember writing his name down.
He was your first convert.
Oh, was he? Okay, cool.
He was one of the stranglers.
Yeah.
The one that you guys spared.
Oh yeah, and I remember that guy.
And he saw you do true healing. And he became you're like your number one fan.
Yeah, I wish Steve would have been there when I was like, hey, look, this guy's look, and you look up and you believe. Because Steve was playing basically like an atheist sorcerer, which is a perfectly plausible position to have in a world where there was basically no magic. There were no gods or anything like that. What was there? So you hadn't DM'd for, like 10, 15 years. You decide to get back behind the screen. You design Sanctuary, which is the setting, right? And it's bounded. There's a sea to the north. There's like mountains and forest to the south. And you decided it's going to be very plausible. Right. Like everything, like the only healing, we didn't find healing potions. We found a pipe and some tobacco that you can smoke, and it has this magical medicinal herb quality to it. Does that reflect your personal philosophy regarding how fantasy should be, or was that just a flavor you were interested in for the moment?
I think it reflects my preference.
Got it.
Yeah. Like I like whenever I find something magic for it to be special. Right.
Sure.
Now, as a DM, I realize that players, they want to advance quickly, right? Sure. So it's like, okay, well, I start giving out +1 swords, but they're not magic.
They're mithril.
Right. They're master crafted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but it just thematically it's different.
Well, it's funny that you didn't play 3rd edition, because 3rd edition had that idea of a masterwork weapon, which wasn't magic. Yeah. It was just really well made, and it would give you like +1 to hit, but no bonus to damage, for instance. So it split the difference between completely not magical and magic, which is +1 to both.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
So when it comes to this most recent 3-episode arc that we did, you had like a week to prep, right?
Well, essentially, actually 3 weeks, because I didn't finish it all, right?
Right, okay.
I got the first, in 4 days, I got the first week done in about maybe a little bit into the second week.
Right.
And then I fucking crunched for the second week, right? And I actually ended up over planning, right? And that's why we went into the third week.
How would you pitch this game? Like if you were to describe it to somebody who hadn't watched it, what's the high level of Into the Bowels of Valengard?
Geez, I'm not a marketing person, but it's a group of dwarves that are traveling to this mythical city that's been rediscovered to be part of the glory of retaking and rebuilding, the dwarven empire, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
I wouldn't say it was an empire, but it's
like a nation, or
right. The hill dwarves in my world got shafted, right?
Okay,
a 1,000 years ago, right? They got involved in some wars that they shouldn't have, and their allies sort of used them poorly, right? And so by the time they sort of realized that they were throwing their best men into a meat grinder, it was kind of too late, and they pulled out. But then they didn't have the strength to defend themselves whenever the orc, and goblin hordes, rushed out of the forest, and so they were kind of fucked, and they went into exile for X number of years, right, into the mountain dwarves kingdom, right? But then humans show up, right, and they're driven here for a whole nother reason,
correct, right? Which we don't know.
No, you don't know. Yeah. And I mean, they're sort of interconnected, right? But eventually, you guys will know. So they show up, and humans being humans, we're kind of what's the word? Ravenous.
Right? Yeah, like rapacious. We're just
exactly.
Take everything. Yeah.
And the hill dwarves see that, and they're like, well, shit, here's our ability to sort of end our exile and go back out and start working towards rebuilding. Right. And they end up, forming an alliance, right? And by the time you get to where we are, hill dwarves and humans, there's no real...
Culturally, they're all intermixed now.
Yeah. I mean, like the humans, right, being sort of orphans, right, and showing up at their doorstep, right, they have adopted a ton of dwarf culture, and dwarves have sort of taken some of the human cultures. And so there's not that, like, it's not always like, oh, you stupid human, stunty, that kind of stuff. I mean, not to say that kind of stuff doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist between these guys.
And Valengard is a dwarven stronghold.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a mountain dwarf stronghold, correct?
No,
it's a hill dwarf. It was a hill dwarf stronghold.
Yeah. Because the mountain dwarves actually live under the mountains, right? Whereas These guys, they live on the surface and delve.
Yeah, because my perception as a player, having gone through that first campaign, was that the majority of it was the gates of Valengard.
It's true. Yeah.
So it was.
You guys never even got to the keep.
Correct.
You did get to the keep. You never got to explore it.
Correct. Yeah, we got to and it was we had to basically go through a mountain and come out to this valley on the other side, and there was like a town there.
Yep.
But that was like the last thing that happened in the campaign. We spent the entire time in the gates. So for me as a player, I always would conflate the gates of Valengard, which is something in a mountain, with the thing it was protecting.
Right.
And so that's why I was constantly like, is it a hill dwarf place? Is it a mountain dwarf place?
No, yeah, it was a hill dwarf place. And the nice thing about doing this was because we basically fast forwarded a year.
Yeah.
Right. And so I got to go back in and think a little bit more about how the gates worked.
Oh,
right?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Like in the first time that big sort of 1,000-foot shaft up to the top wasn't there. Right, you just sort of came out, but then I was sort of doing the geometry.
You're trying to figure out like where these things are. Like,
exactly. I'm like, oh no, that wouldn't work because they would have to go up and then out. If we're to maintain that sort of, natural defensive landscape.
Do you find that your career and your background as an artist informs how you run D&D?
Yes.
Right, and so in what manner is it?
I feel like I want to visually describe everything, set the mood, right? It's like you go into a room. It's not to say that that's wrong, right? Because everyone has their own style, right? But for me, I have a very specific picture that I want to communicate to the players, and I hope that they see it. So I want to give a good visual description.
It's visual. It's all with you. It's visual,
right? If I had the time to paint it, I would paint everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But this is what you see, right? Yeah.
But,
But is there also a component, because there are lots of different ways to be an artist. It seems like one of the things that's really important to you is knowing how things work.
Yes.
Right. Like actually believing, like not hand waving stuff away, like actually knowing, well, there has to be some kind of shaft here because there's a huge elevation difference between. And is that related to the type of artist you are, do you think, when you're drawing?
Detail oriented, I think. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I just like to know, I just like to know how things work. Right. And I don't like the idea that somebody is going to go, that would never work. You know what I mean? And call me on my bullshit. Right. So I try to keep as much bullshit out of it as possible. I mean, the thing is, I show a little bit about my own neurotic nature, right? Whenever I talk about this stuff, because it's like, did I need, like when you guys went down into the tunnel and I described the molds and the centipedes were eating the mold and the lizards were eating the centipedes and the snake was eating the lizards, right? Yeah. Like, I wouldn't have had to have done that, right? But I mean, that's what it didn't take me very long to just think, okay, if there's a giant snake down here, it had to have eaten something to have gotten that giant, right? So, I mean, one, it's flavorful, right? It adds flavor to the environment. But then also, I mean, like when you guys saw those giant lizards, right? Like, I mean, I don't know if you did this or even thought about it. We'll find out. Yeah. But is there something down here that eats those? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it's in a way, it's a little bit of foreshadowing. It's like, okay, there's these big lizards, but they're up there and they're not really coming down to fuck with you guys. We definitely noticed that there was, at least I think we all were aware that there was an ecology down here and there was something in the water. Right. We didn't know. I would not have been surprised if it had been like the D&D piranha or something. Oh yeah, the quippers. Yeah, exactly. Quipper, like many small things. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Whether it might have been a callback to that or one big thing, but I definitely could tell based on the way you were describing it that there's going to be something in there. Well, I think that is. You guys rolled shit on your perception. We did it all the whole time. The whole campaign, we failed to notice a whole bunch of stuff. Because I had like the snake shed, sort of like bits of snake. Right. Sort of floating through the water. And there was a point where you described that. Yeah. I think it was after the thing. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because that I think is your style. That is what is your style as a dungeon master is for you. It's about It's about being able to visualize everything you're seeing and then being able to believe in the functionality of it. Right. So convincing. Convincing is the word I was. Well, it's interesting because you said like you don't want someone to call you on your bullshit. You don't want somebody to go, it would never work like that. So for you, that's your failure state. Like for
you, that's how, right. Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously like the players not having fun would be one of them.
Yeah.
But for you, like you feel like I dropped the ball if players like, it wouldn't work that way. And so it's not just ecology, like how the gates of Valengard worked and the mechanisms of it. And not only that, but like you would spend a lot of time thinking about how do these guys communicate down here? Right. So you came up with that whole like Morse code kind of, but all these iron bars that are built into this thing that conduct sound through the rock.
Right, and they tap them.
Yeah.
And the guys down in the control room can hear it. And
if I were going to describe your style, I would say that there's a lot of emphasis on the practicality and believability of whatever it is we're describing, whether it's ecology or layout or something like that. And that is a great tool for suspension of disbelief, right? For us as players, it makes it really easy to believe in. One of the things I can
live with that. Yeah.
Good. I don't know. Are you conscious of that when that's what I said. How would you describe your style as a DM? Are you aware? Yeah, this is what's important to me.
I think I'm just following my gut.
Right.
Right. It's not calculated. It's just like, this is what I would want to play in. This is what I want to run.
Right.
So that's what I do.
You don't like, I remember when we worked on Evolve, we talked very, very early. We talked about like what kind of science fiction Evolve was going to be. And you're like, I don't like, you listed stuff. You're like, I prefer stuff like Dune or Firefly or Battlestar Galactica. I don't like Star Trek. I don't like, and I was like, oh, you don't like aliens. All right. And I feel like I detect that in Valengard because there's, you said at the outset when you're like, okay, I'm willing to run during the break from the chain, but y'all have to play dwarves. Like I think all of us were like, yeah, we're fine with that.
Right.
But for you, humans make sense and dwarves are cool. But much beyond that, and you like elves, you're not a huge fan of, and you don't like the crazy wild, like tons of different species.
It's not that I don't like them. It's just that I think for the world I was trying to build, they don't really fit. Well, I don't like elves.
It's not that I don't like them. I mean, I don't like them.
Right. But like Dragonborn and Tieflings and all the other ones, they're fine. Yeah. Right. But it's just like I wanted the world to have this flavor of like back, in the Inquisition days, right? When like magic was scary, right? And weird things were scary. And everyone's a little on the xenophobic side and paranoid side and superstitious. Yeah. I think that gives like kind of a cool...
it makes it unique. It gives it a cool vibe.
Atmosphere. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, if you're a wizard, right? Like you do run the risk of getting burned at the stake if you're starting to throwing spells around in a little rural village. Now, I think there's probably places in my world where a wizard could go and use their magic and maybe people were delighted by it. Yeah. And they're like, oh, that's cool. How do you do that? You know what I mean? Like the same way people watch a magician, right? These days, right? And it's like, they know there's a trick to it, right? Or they think there's a trick to it. It's not really magic, right? Right. But, but it is, right? I mean, in the world, like I said, it's not that magic doesn't exist. It's just, it's just starting to bud.
Well, I think like it's too bad we didn't stream the first campaign because this is set a year after the first campaign. And that for people watching, that was definitely the theme of that first campaign was the fact that like everyone we met, they had never seen magic before. And if we used any magic, they had every reaction you could imagine. Someone freaked out, they would want us burned to the stake, or some of them were just like in awe and would follow us. And that was definitely that theme of that first game.
But you guys also like, you guys went with it and tried to, you didn't just like throw your magic around willy nilly, right? Well, like you guys did make an effort to sort of, be subtle,
Well, that was, I thought, a great tension in the game was that we were each having different reactions. Right. Like my character was like, listen, the gods chose me for something. They've given me these abilities. Why not use them? And then we had, Steve's sorcerer who's like, hey man, I can watch. Psh, look at that. I don't follow a god, but I was able to cast this crazy spell. You're delusional. And then there were other people who were like, you guys need to keep this all under your hat. What if what if somebody decides to burn us alive? And so all the different players all had different points of view about how to react to that core central tension.
So in this adventure, you guys didn't spend any time in civilization.
Really. No, not really.
So
a little bit with the caravan, we got a little bit of
a little bit there, right? But I didn't really. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but you guys got separated, and some of those guys did see some stuff. But yeah, just because, like we had some new player, we had Justin, who's a new player.
Not only new to your game, but new to D&D.
That burden, right? Like making you guys play through a city adventure and stuff like that and have that burden maybe would be a little bit too much for new players. And then these guys, they hadn't, OD and Tom, like they hadn't played in my world. So there was a lot more magic slinging in this one. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which we were higher level. We started off at higher level.
Yeah. And I think when the bad guys have the magic, it's cool, right? Because they don't, they're like, hey, we've delved into these secrets, when you thought it was taboo, and now we're a little bit ahead of you, and but yeah, so now like there are more characters though that can do this amazing shit that up to now only very few have been able to do, right? And that's sort of how I'm, at least in my mind, I'm describing the flowering.
The ramping up.
The ramping up of it. Yeah, and maybe at some point it goes crazy. I think there'll probably be like wars and mayhem.
Oh, sure.
That happen.
That's cool.
Because like magic comes out, right? Like, I mean, the whole church, right? The guys that sentenced Rugar to death for heresy, right? Like none of them can do any of this shit.
Yeah.
Right. And so when Rugar starts having his visions, they're like, they're either jealous, they don't believe him, right? Whatever. But I mean, it's a corrupt organization.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. They think of themselves as good, but how much good do they really do? And now, I mean, if we pick that adventure back up, right? Like the Inquisition's going to be after Rugar.
Yeah.
They're like, this guy's a heretic. Yeah. He was sentenced to die and he escaped. And now look what he's doing. Yeah. Right. And so there'll be like this whole fun thing where they're planting misinformation out in the countryside. So if Rugar goes out there, right, like
the Inquisition will have got there first.
You have no idea how people will react to you. Right. They might be like heretic and start throwing stones at you.
Well, I'm just basically Rugar is creating this other alternate power structure, right? That just its existence is a threat to the primacy of the church.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that's
and to the whole system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You said
a system of which the church is just one part.
Right. Well, when I asked you, you were like, I was like, okay, are you a part? Are you a part of the kingdom, or are you forming a new kingdom? Right. Right. And you said a new kingdom. Yeah. Right. So already right there, right, like that's going to be a threat to the king in Kingsford, right, who is sort of like this guy that sort of keeps all the separate territories working together. I mean, all these dwarven thanes, right, that they want a piece of this. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And they have basically sworn allegiance to the Alliance, right? But now there's this upstart guy, right, who was a heretic sentenced to death, and he's starting his own dwarven. Who do you think he is? Yeah. Right. And there'll be guys that try to take advantage of him, right? Like, hey, let me help you. You know, like this is going to be a really hard thing for you to do all by yourself. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there'll be all kinds of like good shit like that. I mean, I don't know if there will be, but I imagine
that's what's in your mind. Yeah. That's what's in your will. Like, who knows what will actually express itself.
Right. It's not as easy, like, in Kingdoms of Warfare or in Strongholds and Followers. It's like, it's not as easy as just taking the hold, right? Like you got to rebuild it. You got to keep it, right? And then, there's all kinds of people that are going to want to hook their claws into you to get their chunk.
Well, that's the classic kind of, there's a steady state world before the movie starts, right? And that's the church and the king, they're in charge. They have all the power, they have the authority, there's no magic, right? And then there's an inciting incident, which is, we've got Rugar can save, or like the gods save him from being hanged. Meanwhile, Steve Sorcerer can do, meanwhile, Tom's Paladin, all that. And then that switches everything over. And now there's tension. Now these established powers are going to have to decide what they do about these new up and comers,
because they can't admit they were wrong.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Right? Because their whole power structure depends on
like what was it, the High Benefactor or whatever we called him, like the main guy, the dwarf that runs the church of
you mean the High Vindicator?
No, that's the Pact.
Right. Okay.
There was the I think I called him the High Benefactor. He was the guy that sentenced sentenced Rugar to death. Yeah. The dwarf that was sitting up there all imperious, and you're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I really would love to like release those backstories at some point.
I don't know why we can't. Yeah. I mean, if you've still got them, that'd be great.
Have them. Yeah, they're on email.
When you sat down to run these 3 sessions, first of all, you didn't know it was going to be 3. You thought it was going to be 2. Did you have a structure in mind? Did you think in terms of beginning, middle, and end? Did you think in terms of a number of encounters? Did you think in terms of first week, second week?
Well, I think I had in terms of what I wanted to, what I wanted you guys to do. I wanted you guys to sort of get to experience, Valengard in its current state a little bit. I wanted you guys to be able to go down and do some classic dungeon delving, right? And then I wanted you guys to find the Horde and fight and fight something that maybe you'd never fought before, or
that's cool,
So that it was those things. I mean, in hindsight, I think there's a lot of stuff that I could have cut out that I don't think anyone would have missed, and we would have been able to get it done in 2. I think the entire second session was kind of fluff. It didn't really, I mean, you guys got to do some dungeon delving and you got some encounters. The encounters weren't terribly challenging, as it turns out. And they didn't really they didn't further the theme, into the Valengard or into the Bowels of Valengard theme, right? It was just kind of like standard dungeon delving. And again, I think if I'd had more time, I would have realized that and changed it before we actually played it.
So let's see if we can break it down on a session by session basis. All right. So what happened in the first session?
All right. So in the first session, you guys, the first session I think was my favorite.
Really? Okay. I think I know why.
There are parts in the second and third that I loved, but I think the first session was my favorite, right? Because I just got to show you guys Valengard, right? You'd never seen it before. I got to introduce you to the Wormwood, and it's just some of the sort of ins and outs of the world. You guys, even though you didn't really know it, you met some Stranglers, right? Which was sort of the criminal organization.
So who were those? Well, yeah, no spoilers, but who were those guys?
Those were the guys that were trying to get the kid.
Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah,
basically, he's
they're trying to get him into Valengard.
Yeah. I don't think that's not really a spoiler. You guys knew that. Well, you did.
Well, I mean, that's what I figured. I figured that those guys. I just didn't know what their plan was once they got him in.
Right. Well, I won't tell you that.
So there was a caravan. There's a caravan of dwarves and humans going from basically civilization into this dark, threatening wood to get to this hill dwarf. This hill dwarf oasis called Valengard, and that was the whole adventure. Yeah, that whole session, that first session, that was all we needed to do. That really, originally I wasn't going to do it like that. Originally I was going to start you guys in Valengard, but then when Tom said he was going to play a druid, I'm like, well, he's not really going to have much to do, if he's down in the dungeon the whole time. So maybe I'll have them go from blisters up, and then he'll get a chance to be in the forest for a little while and do some druidy shit. Right. Which I think, well, I don't know. I think he did. But at the end of the day, I mean, I enjoyed that, right? Because like I said, I got to introduce you to those places. You guys got to be introduced to the Silent, which I think those are cool guys. Yeah. I got to throw some. You got introduced to the Black-Nosed Goblins, right? Yep. Which were we used those in the first. Yeah, the goblins that use crows to communicate over long distances.
Yeah, and I thought that was a cool. I knew you would remember it, but these guys hadn't experienced it, and I like that idea, so I thought it'd be cool to introduce that. But then. The one thing I didn't like was that wyvern went down quick. Oh, yeah. I thought he would give you guys a little more of a challenge than he did, but like Helldust just skewered him.
Yeah, I mean, it can, but it's the constant struggle is the dealing with the just sheer amount of damage that players can dish out. Right. But I thought you did a good job. For those people who haven't seen the episode, this was an encounter where our caravan, which is going through a path in the woods, is assaulted by goblins. And the goblins are hidden, which was cool. So there was never really a point. There was never a point in that encounter where we knew where all the goblins were. Nope. Right. Nope. We may have known where one goblin was, or we knew there was a goblin here, but we didn't know exactly where in this giant grove of bushes exactly he was. And then you had, so it was this like 1-2 punch, because it wasn't that we just fought this wyvern all by itself. This wyvern shows up as we're fighting these goblins. So we're already, ideally, from an encounter design point of view, we're already softened up by the goblins. So that when the wyvern shows up, it can threaten. It can be a threat, even though it's only one creature. Right. But
you guys dealt with the goblins pretty handily. And my rolls for them were pretty shitty.
Oh, okay.
So they weren't hitting a lot. Right. And I probably could have put more of them in. Right. I mean, the way that encounter played out was it was like, okay, I'm gonna throw these goblins at you guys, right? And you guys are gonna get to experience that sort of guerrilla warfare hit that they do, right? And I thought that would be cool, but remembering how I did it the last time in the first campaign, right? I felt like after a while it got a little sloggy.
Okay, that's where you had the wyvern show up because it stops.
And so instead of doing it the way we did it the first time when you guys were going up and you went to the logging camp and they had because I felt like that was long and kind of sloggy. So I was like, okay, well I'm going to do that for a little while, and then when these goblins take a certain amount of damage or a certain amount of the caravanners get killed, it's going to attract this wyvern for an easy meal, right? He hears the sound of conflict, dying, screaming. He smells blood in the air, right?
And it reinforces the idea that this forest is dangerous, right? It's not just the goblins' forest. No, there's all sorts of stuff here.
Exactly. So that was a cool encounter. I wish the wyvern. I could have just beefed up his hit points a little bit, but
it's a good point to make. Is that when you say that previous battle in the forest with the goblins in the first campaign was sloggy? I think what you mean is there was this arc to it of. I don't know if we're going to make it. These goblins could kill us all. And then there's a point where it's like, oh, I'm pretty sure we're going to beat them. Yeah. And that's the point where you want to end it. Right. Because everything that happens after that is just bookkeeping. Yeah, like chasing them around and wearing down their hit points. And so your solution to that was, let's not have a third act with like a part 3 with the goblins. Let's have that third act be a wyvern shows up and all these creatures scatter. Right. So now we don't have to hunt down all these goblins individually. We've got this cool thing. I think that's great. I think that's great encounter design.
Yeah, because I mean, the idea was that because remember I described the crows leaving. Right. Yeah. Right. And basically the crows they sensed the wyvern coming.
Yeah, way before the goblins did.
And the crows are like, we're out of here. And then when the goblins see that, they're like, oh shit, something big's coming. And they beat feet. So yeah, I mean, I liked that structure. I just, I wish that the wyvern had been a little more resilient.
If you were going to do that again, would you
I might have thrown. I think if I had done it again, or maybe something just nastier.
Oh, really?
Nastier monster. I mean, it could have been. It could have been a Bulette. Right. Yeah. Comes up from out of the ground. I mean. When I was planning this, I was highly considering throwing a dragon at you guys, like a young dragon, whatever, the one that's not too bad.
Sure, yeah.
I was like, but I just didn't know like what you guys would be capable of.
Oh, I see.
Right, and the thing is, like with a wyvern could have killed you guys, right? Right. But you dealt with them pretty handily. But like if I throw a dragon at you, like it's a lot easier to scale up than it is used to scale down.
Sure, yeah. It's easier to just give it more hit points.
And I just wasn't confident. It's like I didn't want to kill you guys like straight out the gate. And you probably wouldn't have gotten killed. But that would have been that's the constant challenge. That's since I've started doing this again, right? That I think is the thing that I'm still trying to figure out with Fifth is what is trying to because I don't think the combat rating system works terribly well, at least in my experience. Yeah. Right. Because combat like those hags had a combat rating of I believe it was 6. Yeah. Right. Now I don't know if it's like all of you guys were 5th level. Yeah. So that meant that your combat rating was 20. Or if it meant your combat rating was 6 as a party. There's
a thing in the Dungeon Master's Guide about how to calculate like how much XP do I have to spend on this encounter based on how many PCs do I have of what level. And I think that's
maybe I don't know how to do it.
Well, I mean, even people who do know how to do it complain about it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the as I think you've learned, like the challenge has a lot more to do with what they call the action economy. Like how many bad guys are there? How many actions do they get? Are we outnumbered? Yep. Right. If there's only one, it's really hard to make a challenging encounter against one creature. Yep. Because if it's strong enough to weather 4, 5, or 6 players pounding on it, then any creature in the monster manual that strong has attacks that could kill one character. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's where the trick. That's where that trick comes from. Yeah. Like, what is your perception of how I do it?
Your stuff always seems to work pretty good. I mean, I like when our epic battles are always pretty epic. I don't feel like we just skate through them.
because I think I feel the same way you do behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I felt like that battle. My memory of the Wyvern battle, which is now only 3 weeks old, it wasn't that long, is not that it was a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe I didn't think death was on the line.
Right.
Like, oh my God, we're all
Nor was
die.
it meant to be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But I definitely didn't feel like, so I think like maybe one of the lessons is that we as dungeon masters are often way more critical, and we'll get to that. We're way more critical of our stuff than our players players ever are.
Right. The other thing I really liked about that first adventure is I got to take all but one of the PCs from the first one and turn them into
NPCs that we met.
For you guys to meet. Well, you guys didn't meet Rugar and you didn't meet Lorik. But you met Tom.
But Rugar's presence, I mean, it's kind of his place.
Yeah, exactly.
To a certain extent.
Exactly.
And so a lot of these guys kind of work for him and they were talking about him.
Yeah. And like most of the NPCs were NPCs that I used in the first one. And again, part of that is just because I love those NPCs and I thought it'd be great to use them again. Yeah. Part of it is, time, right? I don't have to think up new NPCs. Yeah. And it makes sense that a lot of those guys would still be around. Like all those scarred up miners. Yeah. Or all those scarred up guys in Valengard were the guys that you pulled out of the dungeons.
Yep. Oh, yeah. That's why I was like, is this that dude who had to eat his son's foot or something? And you were like,
all those guys had been tortured by hobgoblins and mutilated in some form, right? So it was cool to use those guys because they would be totally loyal to Rugar. His guys came in and saved them from certain doom. They're like, this guy's our fucking dude. And he can heal. That's pretty cool.
Let's work for this guy. So you were pretty happy with the way the first session went. I think we all were. It was largely introductory, right? We are in a caravan. We're escorting a bunch of civilians to.
Yeah, well, you guys were part of the caravan. It's just that Sarge kind of says, "Hey,
TJ's old character.
You guys look tough. Yeah, I kind of could use some help here because we always lose people on the way up, right? Stragglers and stuff like that, and they almost did.
Yeah, and we saw that happen, right? And so we get to Valengard. That's the end. As we go through the gates of Valengard, we get to this place, and that was amazing for me as a player because obviously I had been through the first campaign. Getting to see it again was pretty remarkable. And then it's time for that was the whole session. The whole session, it was pretty straightforward. Did we get done as much stuff as you thought we would?
First night went perfect.
Yeah, you thought it ended exactly
as far as where I wanted it to end and how I timed it. I was like, I don't think I could do that again. and
do you feel like you got lucky, or was it planned out? What do you mean when you say you don't think you could do it again?
Well, because the amount of content that I had for that night, it worked exactly good. It was exactly right for our time frame that we had. We had a cool encounter. You guys got to meet a lot of cool NPCs. You got to see a lot of cool places. It was light on encounters, right? But I knew that would be the case, right? Just going into the rest would be heavier on encounters. But yeah, I mean, that was the goal.
You're right.
And I did my best to make it happen. And in this case, it worked.
Yeah. So that way, it was a great ending. It was obvious in retrospect. It was obvious that it was this nice little package that we got done in one night. And then, like halfway between the first session and the second session, you messaged me saying, "I think I need another week." I think So you were aware that you had a whole bunch of content you wanted to grind through somewhat quickly, and you weren't going to be able to get it done in one night.
Right. And looking back, I don't think I needed any of that content.
Okay, let's talk about that. So what happened in the second session?
So in the second session, you guys go down into the bowels, right? And you find an old mithril mine, and that's where I throw the rust monsters at you,
right?
And that was intended to just be sort of like a warm up encounter, right? And so cool, you're in this mine, right? But then at that point, I'm like, well, shit, where do I go from here, right? Like because it doesn't make sense to me, like. You have these dungeons where, you go 100 feet down the hallway and there's a completely different monster that lives there, right? Yeah. It's like, why isn't that monster feeding on the rust monsters, right? In order for the rust monsters to have their home here, I feel like they need to have sort of carved out a niche that is uniquely theirs.
Like an ecological niche.
Yeah. And I'm sure most people wouldn't care, but, it bothers me. Right.
I know it bothers some players.
Yeah.
Some players rebel at the idea of like the.
So then I'm okay. Well, so where do I go from here? Right. I mean, I could go deeper into the mine, but then that starts to get stale, right? It's mine. And then what's down in the mine, right? What's plausibly down in the mine? I thought, okay, I could put Darrow down there. I could put Duergar, Dwargar.
Yeah.
I could put, like any sort of subterranean race, but one, like I think in your campaigns, we've done those a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I want to give these guys something new to fight, and also because I knew it was going to be streamed. I'm like, yeah, it'd be cool, to just do some more of the classic shit, for the viewers to see.
Well, like when you chose the Wyvern.
Well, wait, but hold on. But then the other thing was, like, if I introduce, like, say I put a colony of Dwargar down in the mines. That has big implications
in the world
for my world. I'm like, shit, I don't think I'm ready to go there yet. I would like to save that, right? Because there is stuff down deep, right?
Cool.
That you guys are not. It will be big world changing discoveries, but I don't think it's there yet, right? I mean, which is good, right? It tells you that I'm committed to this world and I'm ready to play it.
That sounds great
for many, however long it works. But yeah, so then that's where I was sort of like, okay, well, I don't want to do that, right? And so that I was just kind of like, okay, well, the rust monsters had to get in here somehow, right? Okay, they dug a tunnel from a natural cave, right? And that's where you guys, end
and that leads us to the
right. And then I'm like, okay, well, what kind of cool encounters can I do in the natural cave,
right?
And that's the giant snake, and bloody hell, a snake,
bloody hell, yeah.
And, you guys could have fought the giant centipedes and the giant lizards, but at that point it was kind of like, okay, I got a lot of shit. I want to get these guys to Keystone by the end of the night.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I'm like moving you along. I almost didn't even do the Umber Hulk because I wasn't sure if you guys were going to make it to Keystone.
Right.
I'm glad I did, because I think that was one of the more challenging fights.
Yeah. That was a really cool encounter. Do you think when you're designing this stuff, do you think in terms of like, encounters that build in difficulty, or are you primarily thinking just in terms of what's in this world, what's down here, and not necessarily any rhyme or reason to how tough it is?
I want the last fight of the night to be a little more epic,
right? Sure,
right. Than there's the ones that just sort of are they're not filler, right? They give you some cool combat and some chance to use all your shit. But yeah, the one near the end, I want that to be a more epic battle.
Makes sense.
The Umber Hulk made sense. And I actually gave myself the option of running 2, because I wasn't, after you guys whooped the Wyvern's ass, I'm like, are they going to fuck this guy up too? Like 2 rounds. Oh, the Umber Hulk's dead. Right. I was like, okay, well, I have another one hiding in that other chamber, right? They're a mating pair.
That's cool.
And if I need it, I can have that one come. But it turns out that thing was pretty nasty and didn't need it.
Yeah. Especially when you're using all of its crazy abilities and stuff, like its confusion and stuff. Yeah. When you were thinking about what kind of stuff is in this cave, let's not use Dwargar, partially because I had used them somewhat recently. Is there also an element of trying to keep things grounded? Because you used a wyvern instead of a dragon, for instance. And there are parts about it is how tough dragons are. Also, dragons are a lot more magical. Dwargar are a lot more explicitly fantastical.
Yeah, I've got some stuff that I want to do with dragons, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
Right, because you want to hold off on... This is the same thing with the Dwargar. You want to hold off on these explicitly fantastical things and have those be big moments in the campaign.
Right. Like if you read if you read through the description of the Wormwood in the player's guide, I talk about, it was rumored that an ancient red dragon lives somewhere in the heart of the Wormwood. Right. So like if I would want to save dragons for something like
some
that.
Big climactic thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, holy shit, Abraxas is still alive and he's back. And he's like, fuck, I bricked this place once. Yeah. I'm going to do it again.
I've been kind of waiting for that dragon to show up ever since we learned about him in the first campaign.
Not saying that that's going to happen, but I want to leave that option open. And I think that's a much higher level adventure and a much more sort of, it's not just a quick 3-shot kind of a thing.
So you feel like you could have probably cut, do you feel like you could have just gone from, the first session directly to the third session? Because there was definitely, from my point of view, like meeting a Galabdur, that is more explicitly fantastical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was really, I'd never met in all my years of D&D. I don't think I'd ever fought a Galabdur before. So I thought that was a really cool use of them. He's not really a monster in the way you implemented him. He's more like a guardian.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you could have just, in retrospect, do you feel like you could have just gone to the Galabdur?
I think I could have, or, I think ideally I just would have figured out some cool way to keep you guys in the mine and going deeper. Right. And then at a certain point, the mine is as deep as it's going to get. And then you guys somehow make your way into this tomb that's way underground. I think that would have been better. I probably could have made less for the second session. I think I could have made more epic encounters.
Got it.
Instead of a giant snake, right? Something else. I don't know.
Right.
You know. Yeah, and and I wanted to do some traps. I wanted to do actually a lot of traps.
Really? Okay.
I just, again, it was just like I felt rushed. You know what I mean? And I felt like I didn't have the time to really sort of think through. It's like, oh, there's a pit trap. It's like, well, no, I had all these like neat ideas, right? Yeah. Where it's like, you step into a hallway and you trigger the trap. And the hallway goes right,
moving stuff,
and it knocks the guy over, and then the brick that was here goes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Thinking about how it would work, right? Yeah. Okay, so it turns, and then gravity pulls it down, right? And then whenever it resets itself, maybe it goes the other way.
That's classic kind of Grim Truth's traps. I don't know if you remember those products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they were kind of classic third-party 80s. So what role do you think traps play in D&D? Were they a big part of the games that you played when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah. We used traps a lot. But then, like I feel like at least in first and second edition, like that was the reason you needed a thief.
Yeah, sure.
Right? To pick locks and disarm the traps. And I haven't quite wrapped my head around traps in 5th edition just yet. Because there's like a challenge rating associated with them.
Yeah, it's like an encounter.
And it's like typically like a thief, if you're the thief, that's part of your job. So you're like, all right, I'm going to look for traps because here, but like in 5th edition, like it's not always like I look for traps, right? I just don't hear it happening a lot. And it seems like more on the periphery. I haven't figured out a good way to sort of. Well, because I want you guys to look for the traps, but I also don't want to be like, hey, you should look for traps here.
Right. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And you also don't want to just spring one on the players like it's almost like a punishment. If the players didn't know this is the kind of game we're in, then they're not going to be looking for traps. And the first one might, could kill everybody or whatever. Right. Yeah. It's definitely not something that is, I would say it's not prominently featured. Like, there's a player's handbook, a DM's guide, and a monster manual. There's not a book of traps. Right. The monster manual is called the monster manual, not challenges, right? That might have a mix of puzzles, traps, and monsters. Yeah. So I think that's part of the problem is this de-emphasis on traps.
Well, yeah, like when you guys went through the gatehouse, right?
There was
I had lots of traps in there, but it was, you guys really didn't know they were there until you sprung them. Yeah. Right. And then unfortunately, as I was designing those, I was kind of seeing this sort of problem. Right. It's like, well, how are they going to know to even check for these things? Yeah. So I didn't make them lethal. I made them more like they box you in, right? Yep. So basically, if an enemy were to storm the gatehouse, right, like these traps are basically meant to sort of box them in so that the defenders are shooting fish in a barrel.
Well, I think that's perfectly on brand for Phil Robb, the Dungeon Master, right? Because you like traps, but you're not just going to throw them in here randomly. You wanted to believe in how is there a trap here? Right. Well, because this is a defensive fortification. Right. So any trap would be something that would be designed to thwart invaders.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, no, that makes perfect sense.
You guys, I think, made the second session good. I don't think it was me. Oh. I did my best to describe cool areas and have some cool stuff for you to fight. But I think the value of the second one was just listening to, these two go back and forth and, listen to Morag do her thing and, just, the characters sort of working through those problems.
Were you surprised by us as players?
I wasn't expecting that much role playing.
Really?
Yeah, I was, like OD, right? He just went full bore. Yeah. And then I think that sort of made Tom feel comfortable. Yeah. Right. I didn't know what to expect from you. You played Rugar pretty boisterously, right? So I wasn't really surprised when you did Morag, right? But it was cool because, most of the table is doing like
we had three
real outward sort of expressive characters, and I think that was super entertaining for me. And I think probably I think that's you guys made the second episode cool.
That's interesting because I think that's going to dovetail into the third episode because the third episode is, I think, where we saw some of the coolest stuff from your side of the screen as far as the characters you were playing, not just encounter design, but also now like the little the quote unquote dwarf girls that we met. Like that, when I talk up my friend Phil as a dungeon master. That is what I'm talking about. So what happened in the third episode? Like, if somebody hasn't seen the third episode, what happened?
All right. So in the third episode, basically Keystone the Guardian has let you guys in. He's recognized Justin's character as having some distant bloodline to this, and that was a random roll, by the way.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was thinking of that, and I was like, okay, why would Keystone let these guys in? He's not just going to let any dwarf in, right? Okay, well, what if one of them is distantly related to that clan, to that family? So I just did a D6 and dropped a 6. Yeah. And Justin came up, which I thought was cool. It's like, oh, it's his first game.
Yeah,
he'll get to be a little bit special.
I would have bet cash money that you'd pick Justin on purpose because it was his character's name was Bone Braid. Yeah, and then the tomb is the Tomb of the Iron.
Wow, I came up with the name after.
Yeah, because you're like
after I knew it was him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So there's a Galabdor guardian that guards these three tombs. Right, and each tomb is like its own dungeon. It seems like. Yeah, yeah, and the other two are intact, right? So like Keystone, he hasn't tried to. It's not really his job to address the. He can't fix the corruption.
He can't fix it, right? Because he can't even fit in there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Right? I mean, he was big, but then he also has these other two to work. And I mean, he's a simple creature,
right? Yeah, he's like a robot.
He's not meant to. His task is keep people from going through these fucking doors. Yeah. You know what I mean? And if somebody subverts and gets in another way, he's like, I don't know what to do, right? Yeah, he fucking blue screens.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're using computer terminology, right? Because he's basically an automaton.
Yeah. So he lets them in, and you guys go down and you start meeting these dwarven girl children, and each one is sort of their own character and has their own sort of flavor. They're eccentric, and they're meant to be cute, but they're also pretty fucking disturbing, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like haunted kids, that like I hate that shit. Right? Like any movie that I've ever seen with haunted kids freaks me out. Right. So I was like, okay,
you put the stuff that freaks you out in your game.
Yeah. Because I just assume that if they freak me out, they freak everybody out.
Sure. Well, I mean, right? you start with what you know. Like, I know this freaks me out, so it is at least successful. It is at least successful at that level.
But yeah, I mean, I spent quite a few days trying to figure out what that final enemy would be. I was like, well, could it be? It could be a dragon. It could be, I was like, the dragon. It just seems so predictable, right? Sure. So like, I've never played hags. Okay, and it's like, okay, well, the hags can disguise themselves, and I'll give you my notes, and you can post them. I'll have to redact them a little because there's some stuff about the curses. And
well, stuff you could post them, and you could send them to me, and we won't read them. We'll just upload them. So if you don't want us, if you want no spoilers, then or it's up to you. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, I don't think I want. I'm going to redact the curse parts, right? Because I have written down how you guys can get rid of them, and all that stuff. It's not straightforward.
Oh, cool. Good. Right? Good. Be boring.
And I think probably when we come back to this, that's what's going to seed the next adventure. Right. It's like, you guys are going to be like, fuck this. Let's go find those hags and try to get rid of this curse.
Yeah. I was 100% sure that I knew what kind of session, what the hook for these kids was. And I was completely wrong.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I thought you were ripping off I thought you were doing the same thing I did. I thought you were ripping off an old Star Trek episode.
I don't know any of those. I know the Tribbles episode and the one where Captain Kirk and Spock fight with
Well, there's actually, I think there's also there's a Venture Brothers episode that's like this. That's about what happens. It's kind of also some classic Fallout plotting where what happens when you have a colony of dwarves, for instance, and they're trapped here and they can't get out. And now it's 1,000 years later. Right. And there's something that's made it so that there's some supernatural challenge that kills off all the adults and keeps the kids in some kind of perpetual eternal
state.
Eternal kid state. That I was certain that was the challenge. So I was delighted to discover that I was completely wrong, because that's when we meet these dwarf children. First of all, we meet them one at a time, right? You deliberately structured it so each kid, quote unquote, gets an introduction, gets their own challenge, gets their own encounter. But they appear to be feral. Right, that's what they seemed like to us. Yep. But that was also the fact that they're actually they're hags. Right. So it's not that they're feral children. It's that they're hags. Right. And they're filthy. Right. Yep. So I thought that was great, for me at least. It seemed like a great kind of bait and switch.
Those were my favorite part of the entire thing.
Oh, sure.
Those characters.
Yeah.
I wish that their encounters had been more compelling.
Well, I mean, maybe
like meeting them and talking to them, I think was fun.
Yeah.
And it was fun playing them. But at the end of the day, like I would have thrown a lot more rats at you guys.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
If I thought we had the time to get through everything.
Got it. Yeah.
It's like we said, okay, tonight's the last night.
Yeah.
And
we played till like 1 a.m.
Right. Yeah. Right. I probably could have stretched another short session.
Right.
Basically, I think what I would have done was I would have spent the whole session on last Wednesday and do all 3 encounters, and then I would have saved the final.
I was feeling that. I was feeling like I could feel like structurally, I was like, I think this needed a 3.5 or a 4th episode.
Yeah, it totally did. Because then I could have, because like originally I was going to go, I was like 15 rat swarms and like 5 giant rats, right? Yeah. Something that would have made you guys like throw your fireballs, right?
Yeah.
And like really sort of, have to think about how do we not just get nickeled and dimed to death by these little chittering, things. But yeah, I mean, the characters themselves, I thought were great.
Do you feel as though your commitment to plausibility and using not crazy over the top fantasy stuff limited you in your encounter design? Because you're like, what were we fighting? We were fighting rats and we were fighting bats,
and skeletons.
And skeletons. Well, skeletons are starting to get quasi supernatural.
Right. Again, with the second encounter, right? I had a lot more bats planned.
I'm not surprised, yeah.
And I had giant bats, right? Yeah. And I was like, shit, I'm looking, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm like looking at
I didn't notice.
Looking at my time every once in a while, like trying to just sort of portion out.
Yeah, I try to think.
Right? And I'm like, okay, I've spent a little bit more time on that than I really wanted. So I need to cut this one down a bit.
Yeah.
Right. And in the original encounter design, I was going to throw 30 skeletons.
Jesus.
Right.
Because those original encounters, we would have been wasted if we fought those hags at the end.
Well, I know, but you guys rested. I mean,
we would have.
You guys ended up resting anyways. Yeah, so I mean, but it would have given you guys a chance to really throw out some epic shit and fucking just see skeletons exploding all over the place, right? And getting these like cool, area of effects. I don't know exactly all the spells you guys had, but But yeah, I imagine those encounters being a lot bigger than they ended up being. That way, so I introduced this cool character, right? And then you get to a pretty cool epic fight scene. Like, I mean, if you're fighting thousands of rats, I mean, they're just rats, memorable. But that's like, nobody wants to fight 1,000 rats, right?
You don't want covered in rats, and there's a never-ending swarm of them.
Right,
that's a different scenario. And they're just a handful of them
biting you, like for 1 to 3 damage, or 1 to 4 damage. Well, it creates that great
dramatic arc where our perception is, it's just rats, and then there's we're all going to die. Like if we don't start doing something crazy.
And now, I mean, in Dagmar got pretty
absolutely
fucked up by those rats, which was cool, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think, looking back, like, it's like I loved all the role playing we did for the session 3, and I loved those NPCs.
Yeah, they were great.
I'm glad that you guys will probably get to meet them, at least 2 of them.
Those 2 of them again. Yeah, they were a huge hit. Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think most of the time when I'm critiquing myself and being hard on myself, it's because of the encounter stuff. And with the hag fight, with the end fight, I had this idea, right? I wanted it to be like this, like hit you from all sides. It was that, right? The problems I had with that were more logistical than like execution or not execution, than the idea of it. I thought the idea of it was cool. The problem I was having was tracking everything that you guys were doing out here.
Right.
And then tracking the hags, because I
know where the hags were.
Yeah. Right. Because I didn't want to just like say, hag pops out here, right, and shoots you, right? Oh, and then she's over here, right? It's like, how the fuck did she get over there, right? Because I didn't give them teleport.
Sure, right.
So I wanted it to feel fair.
Were you counting squares? Were you counting?
I was trying to.
Okay.
Right, but I guarantee you, like there was a few that I fudged a square or 2 to get them where I wanted.
That's what I do. Yeah, I'm the same way in the sense that it can't be implausible. Mm-hmm. But in my head, I'm like, I don't got time to count squares. I'm sure they could get there in 2 rounds. I'm sure you could get here from here to here. There's some way.
Right.
So I'm not going to figure out the way. I'm just going to say, okay, it takes.
Right. The thing I didn't have though for that was I didn't really have a solid battle plan.
Oh, right? Really?
Because here's the thing about the hag covens is as long as there's 3, they're they're fucking formidable.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think that it ups their challenge rating to like 9, three green hags. Because they get all these coven spells and stuff like that, right? And so what I imagined them doing was that popping out here and there, frustrating you guys, right? And then at some point, there would be like this showdown.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's you guys and them, and they're just throwing their crazy shit. But I was never really able to get them into the position that I wanted them to be in.
You never got to that last phase. It was the whole battle was basically the hit and run phase.
Yeah, exactly. And I never found a good place for it to be like them popping out and being like, yeah, you know, all three of them, and you guys being, yeah,
right,
and then running towards each other, kind of a thing.
That's what you want. You want that dramatic confrontation,
right? And the thing is, when you guys were able to isolate Gotka and kill her, I was like, that's it. This battle's over, right? Because like those they don't have a lot of hit points. You know, I mean, I could have juiced them past what they had, right? But at that point, we're getting late. Right.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, I think I just need to let this play out. And I thought about it and I was like, okay, well, you know, because I planned, if I could, to have Basra escape.
Right.
I wanted her to escape, and it was my plan to do everything I could to make her escape.
Right.
I mean, I was okay if you guys caught her and tracked her down and got her. That would be fine too. But I wanted her to escape. The problem was, like, Torgra was in a place where she could escape. Right. And I'm like, well, I don't think she's going to throw her life away. I mean, all these hags, right? Hags are solitary creatures and tend to think of themselves as smarter and better than everybody else, right? Torgra's no exception. So I don't think she's going to throw her life away for Basra. So she's like, fuck this. And she runs right past Basra. You're on your own, bitch. Right.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I like that because I also, you know, I think there's a place for the fanatical cultists or, you know, mindless monsters that fight to the death. But when the bad guys behave intelligently and do things like run, like, okay, we're going to break morale and get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
That it feels more plausible and more realistic.
Right.
I think that's kind of where you felt let down, was because there was like, is this going to be a dramatic, epic confrontation, or is this going to be plausible? What's the plausible thing? The plausible thing is that once one of them's dead, they lose their major powers. So the other two are going to split, right? That's what's plausible. And it's a trade-off. Is it, it certainly felt realistic.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, that was what had sent me home feeling like, thinking about it, like, that was not nearly as epic as an ending as I wanted it.
You felt like it was anticlimactic.
Yeah. And I mean, even like the way, because I could feel it, and I don't know if you guys felt it, but like, I was like, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, is that it? Oh, I do. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it was because we didn't know we didn't know the language. Like, what's the signal that this is going to be the end?
Yeah. I don't think I did either. It's because I'm thinking the whole time, like, okay, do I let them keep going and try and like chase him down?
Right.
And I was like, but they're not going to chase him down, right? Like, they're running and they're going into a place that the players haven't been at
right?
And it's full of the vines and all that other, stuff. So I was like, I'll just end it and, do better next time.
If you were going to do it again, what, if anything, because we all had a great time, what, if anything, would you do different?
I think I would have given them minions in this battle.
Got it.
Right. Yeah. I would have had whatever bats and rats and skeletons that made it out of those initial fights, just retreat with them.
Right.
Or retreat after them. And then that would have given... Basically, it would have given me a chance to position them while still fucking with you guys and distracting you with minions, and then I could have had them just like all like maybe, run out of the one room. Right. I'm pointing at this like people can see it.
Well, I mean, we might be recording this. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the map.
And then I would have been able to get them in position and have that sort of epic final battle. And I could have, thrown, because I had all those big spells. I still had 2 lightning bolts that I could have cast.
Yeah.
Right. I had, Phantasmal Killer, which is a pretty wicked spell.
Yeah.
I used the eye bite because I was like, I don't think I'm going to get to use the eye bite if I don't use it now. Which wasn't actually as cool as I thought it would be. For some reason, I thought eye bite did damage and it just makes them go to sleep or run away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was the one where it was a schmuck who went unconscious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The curse thing was pretty cool. I could have cast that a few more times. Where he had disadvantage on the wisdom save.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember when you were trying to figure out which of these effects to pick from Bestow Curse, and you were like, let's pick the wisdom one. And in the back of my head, the DM part of my brain was like, there better be, Phil, there better be a creature here that's got a spell with a wisdom save, otherwise you're going to regret this.
Yep.
So I was glad that there was.
No,
like, oh, perfect, awesome.
A lot of those, they had a whole person.
Right.
A lot of those spells were wisdom saves, which is polymorph. If Gotka had survived that last turn, she was going to polymorph Dagmar into like a little peep or a baby chick, something that's easy to step on.
Easy to crush. What is your opinion now that because you've run now two, one major campaign we played for months in the first Valengard game, and then now we've done a little mini mini adventure, 3 sessions. What is your opinion about the monster design of 5th edition?
No, I think they're easier to run than they were in like first.
Okay.
I mean, I remember in first and second, right? Like a lot of those things had all kinds of powers. I mean, it's made easier now. Like I had Jerry pull all the spell cards.
Oh, really?
For the
that's hags, right. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Nice.
Which was, I mean, if he hadn't done that.
Thanks, Jerry. Good job.
Yeah. If he hadn't done that, that would have made it a lot harder because then I would have had to have all these
go through the book. Yeah. Oh my God, it's such a pain in the ass.
Yeah. And I was thinking, okay, well, the nice thing about D&D Beyond is I had the hag on there.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was mouse over the spells in their spell list and it pops up a window. That's so cool. If I didn't get the cards, I was going to do that. So that's pretty nice. I like the monsters. I wish, I think because my world is plausible, I feel limited by that, right? Yep. And so, I mean, and that's my fault. It's not their fault.
That's the choice you've made regarding
the choice.
Well, you like when you just look through the monster manual, you learn a lot about what level of fantasy is D&D. Like there aren't that many challenging creatures to use that are quote unquote natural beyond a certain level.
Yeah.
Right. They sort of expect that fighting natural creatures is something that happens when you're low level.
Right.
But you could imagine a different monster manual where there were all sorts of that's one of the things I was wondering is that I've in the past and maybe in the future where I want to have an encounter where the players are like the cranium rats. Remember the cranium rats in the Somnium Tenebris? I was like, I want it to be rats because it's the idea of the ship getting infested the way a ship would. But these guys are 5th level. They can't. So the cranium rats.
You just could have thrown 30 rat swarms at us.
I could have thrown, but I wanted it to be more like, it's the astral sea. What kind of rats do you get? Yeah. Did you ever think about that when you were thinking about rats and bats? Did you ever think about making them rats and bats, but more magical rats and bats, or giving them any kind of like crazy?
Not really. No, I mean the magical part was they had these sort of familial connection with
it's the fact that the hags could command them and stuff like that, and they were the way they coordinated with each other in a way that probably normal rats would have. Right. That's cool.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So yeah, I didn't, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make it challenging just by throwing numbers at them,
right?
Because I know that like I said, little wimpy creatures, right, in numbers. Can
be overwhelming.
Yeah, they're no joke.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I think if I had to stretch the final battle and just put it into a 4th week, I would have done that. But I mean, like I said, it is what it is.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, I think everyone had fun. I had fun. We had a ton of laughs. Overall, I count it as a success.
Oh yeah, huge success.
I don't do anything without
being critical,
without looking at the stuff and saying, okay, well, how do I make this better next time?
That's a perfectly natural. I think that you're an artist. Like you're an artist with a capital A.
I'm a game developer, right?
Correct,
I mean, like you have you probably do have an idea because you were a game developer. Or
I still am. Yeah. It's just a different kind of game.
Every game that I've ever worked on that wasn't successful, I still think about like, God, if I'd just done it this way.
If we had done this, if we had done that, yeah.
And I mean,
even the successful
games,
games,
on some real stinkers, right?
Like, I mean, you worked on Left 4 Dead, and I was there throughout all of Evolve's development, and you were often critical of stuff that was done in Left 4 Dead. It's not just even a success. There are things. Oh, I wish we could have done this. Right. Oh, I wish we could have done this.
Right.
And I think that people who for whom D&D might be their only creative outlet, they're not familiar with, they hear us being critical and they're like, oh, don't be hard. And it's like, no, we're not being hard on ourselves. That's the normal process. It's the normal creative process is to look back at what you did.
Right.
And be like,
well, and when your career is creating content.
Yes.
I've been creating content for, oh God, how long has it been? Since like 93?
Yeah.
right?
Is that when you first got started as a professional illustrator?
That's when I was doing stuff for D&D.
Yeah, which is crazy because Phil and I were both in the tabletop business at the same time.
Yeah.
I think our it was like this as far as our timelines.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I was commissioning art for stuff like Star Trek and Dune. And we could have ended up working together, which is crazy what a small world it was. And I was playing games you worked on. I was playing Nox. My friends and I loved Nox. Phil worked on that. That was a great game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just being critical of work is a normal process.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like you want your name to be on stuff that is well regarded.
Sure, of course. So it doesn't.
When you're a content creator. Yeah. Well, I mean, not everyone cares, right? A lot of people are just like, it's cool, and then that's fine, right? Yeah. But I mean, my temperament is that I want to make awesome shit. Yeah. Right. And I'm willing to put in a little extra work to try and make it.
Well, and not everybody has the opportunity. Yeah. And when you're conscious of the fact that not everybody has the opportunity to make video games, not everybody has the opportunity to stream D&D for thousands of people, that drives you to make it as good as it can be. Right. This is not just your home game with 4 people. No one's ever going to see this again. You feel like this could live on. Like the work you put into the Player's Guide to Sanctuary is crazy. Like people saw that and they were like, oh my God, like look how much all this art you got and all the writing you did for that. And
I stole that art.
Well, it still took, but yeah, it's ref. It's ref, right? As they call it. It's reference. Right. It's not original illustration. It would be something.
It would be if I released it as a product.
If you released it as a product, you would use those images to tell the artist what to draw. Right. But even finding those images takes time and requires having an artistic sentiment and knowing which is the right image and which is not. I remember there was a great quote from David Gilmour, who's a guitarist from Pink Floyd, talking about back when they were doing, it was the, before they did The Wall, they did an album called Animals. And their audience was so huge. This is kind of the same thing the Beatles had to deal with when they were still a performing band. Their audience was so huge. And for the audience, going to a Pink Floyd show was an experience unto itself. And so they would be out there, the audience would be drinking, they'd be smoking, and they'd be having a great time while there was music playing. And so David Gilmour would come off stage and all the people that worked for the kind of Pink Floyd organization would be like, great show, you guys knocked it out. He goes, no, it was terrible. We screwed this up. His guitar wasn't plugged in. Right. I was off key. I screwed this up. And only the people on stage know that it did. Only the person behind the screen knows that, no, it wasn't awesome. Right. It didn't go as well as I thought. Right. But the people in the audience don't know that. The people in the audience are like, yay, and they just are having a great time.
Right, because what they experienced was good. Yep. Right. And what the creatives were saying was, it could have been so much better.
Exactly. Well, because those of us, that's kind of the why that third session was so much fun. Actually, all 3 of the sessions had a strong component of us role playing off each other, right? Interacting with each other. So that allows you to kind of, so us in the audience, our experience is not just the stuff you're doing behind the screen. Right. It's also each other. Yep. And so,
I mean, you guys had me in stitches and quite a few times.
That's awesome. So, yeah. I don't think I ever articulated this even internally to myself, but there was definitely a low level suspicion on my part that we might be annoying you. Either the amount or the style, the tone, the kind of comedic tone that we were casting might kind of.
That was fun.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, cool. Because it would.
Well, because I mean, I'm the one who presents you guys with the situations, right? And if you do something goofy,
right?
I mean, I get to react to that, right?
Okay,
like when Yeasnor starts blowing on his bagpipes, right? I was like, okay, that it was funny. But then I got to do the jump scare.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Yeah, I thought that was something I tweeted about. Those of you who haven't seen the first episode, there was a point where the caravan that we're escorting, it's nighttime. We're going to get everybody, round up all the wagons. We're going to have dinner or whatever. And Matt O'Driscoll's playing a bard, but his instrument is bagpipes. And so he starts playing the bagpipes in the middle of the forest. And the way Phil contextualizes how that scares the hell out of everybody is Phil said, okay, everybody roll initiative. And we were like, oh God, what's going on? Who's attacking us and why? And then you were like, oh, after we had all rolled and told you our numbers, you're like, yeah, nothing happens. But you guys, and I was like, oh, that was awesome. Because it actually,
everyone in the caravan pulled out their weapons.
Yeah. It did a great job of getting the players, this ludo-narrative harmony, where us, the players, were having the emotions that our characters would have had, but using a completely different mechanic.
That's fine. I mean, and when we were playing in the last campaigns, like Steve did a bunch of goofy shit, right? It's like, it's fine. I mean, cool. You just roll with it. And no, it didn't annoy me at all. I mean, there were a few times when I was like, I felt like, okay, are we done? Should I continue? Right. Not because I was annoyed, just because I was like, are you guys good to go?
Yeah.
Right. And I think I was like, okay, so, right. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what you read as me being irritated.
Well, no, I didn't read that at all. I didn't get any read off of that. I'm aware of the fact that I think everybody has the capacity to do this, but certainly new dungeon masters often get kind of wrapped up in how they hoped their world would be interpreted. I wanted to run a really serious game and you guys are being silly. But once you've done it a few times, you realize that...
Well, there's a time to be serious and there's a time to be funny.
Right, yeah.
Right? Left 4 Dead is a pretty dark world, but there's a lot of funny humor. Well, yeah, a lot of humor. Same with Evolve, right? Evolve was a dark world, but we put plenty of humor in there.
Well, that's something we talked about when we were working on Evolve, was like a key reference for both of us is movies like The Thing, right? And that stuff only works because the thing that makes it seem more real is the humor. That humor punctuates it, because that's the
Aliens, I think, is the best example.
Like Hicks is such a great character, and there's a lot of and Hudson. That notion of intense moments when over the top crazy stuff is happening in the real world. We have gallows humor on purpose to take to have like a release valve. And so that's
because nobody wants to be dour and doom driven all the time. Right?
Yeah, there's a time and a place.
I mean, even in the Elric books, I seem to remember a few times when there was like kind of dark humor moments. It wasn't very often.
No, but also like there are times when Elric gets to do it, but it's often the companion. It's often like Moonglum. It's often Moonglum or Rakir, the Red Archer, who is the kind of comedic commentary, and gets to be like, he's the one that voices are like, wow, you're awfully dark, right? That kind of stuff, which is great.
I mean, I think that just makes the content more relatable if you can laugh. You get some laughs in there.
Well, yeah. Speaking of laughs, like your performance as these 3 dwarfs, like I had told these 3 hags, I had told people that like when you were playing like Skoros and Graves in the Turtle Rock campaign that I ran, you were much more in line with like Tom Jacobson or Justin, in the sense of you were certainly willing as a player to engage in the problem solving and everything like that, but you weren't often speaking in character. And then I saw you behind the screen where you were contorting your body and doing all these different voices. And I remember thinking, where's that guy when we're doing this? And so that's when you were like, hey, I want to play a Githyanki. I was like, sure, because I felt that I was right. That you were going to be a lot more kind of that Jim Henson creature shop is the phrase I use. And so Slim has a really kind of outrageous personality that's awesome. And these characters you were playing were amazing. You feel a different pressure behind the screen to entertain.
Well, yeah, because one, you are kind of, you're in charge of your players having fun, right? So there's that part of it. There's less pressure on an NPC to be perfect.
Right.
All the time. So like with those hags, right? You were going to meet them that night. A good chance you would have killed them all that night, right? So there's not this sort of like protracted long task of keeping them in character, right? It's like I get to hit them hard for an hour, right? And then I'm done and I don't got to worry about it.
Yeah, like Slim, there's a sense of maintaining continuity.
23, how many? 21?
Yeah, we've played 21 nights. 22 sessions.
And if I had to come up with some like over the top, I don't think I would have been able to, I don't think I could maintain an over the top personality.
Well, it's also consistency. Like you were concerned with, you don't have to worry about an NPC that's only around for like one encounter, whether or not they're the same person consistent with who we met 3 weeks ago or whatever. But you as a player are worried about keeping Slim. And I think it's interesting because it gets back to that Phil Robb brand. It has to be plausible, right? It has to be fundamentally plausible. And so playing Slim means thinking about what would Slim do? What does Slim want? Rather than what do I think is interesting or cool in this moment? That's no good because that may contradict what you did last week.
Exactly.
Well, you don't have to worry about that. An NPC that has a life expectancy of like half an hour, or whatever.
It helps too. Like, I mean, I probably would have done the role playing stuff with these NPCs, but it helps when you guys are doing it. When players are willing to put themselves out there, it certainly makes it a lot easier. And maybe you guys fed off of that as well, like where you see me playing a character and sort of just letting it happen, right? And being like, oh, well, he's doing it, I can do it too. I don't know.
Well, there was no one in the first session, with the possible exception of Yon Yon, but we didn't hang out with Yon Yon a lot. True. Yeah. There was no one in the first session that was anything like these kind of over the top, comedic, like Labyrinth / Dark Crystal personalities that we met in the third session. Was the creation of those 3 hags and their personalities? Because you did a lot of work on that. You had a lot of like dialogue you had written out, props you had ready, not accents per se, but like the list, the personality and the cadence and the way they spoke, which was incredibly consistent for each one. Like you always knew which one was talking if there was ever a time. Was any of that a reaction to the way we had been playing our characters?
No, I had that all pretty much written.
Okay, so you knew ahead of time that was all.
Like Torga was the artist, right? Yep. She was the dumbest of the 3.
Yeah, she's the one who was painting all the statues,
as we artists, tend to be. At least
is that your commentary on your fellow artists? Like very creative, dumb as a rock.
Hey, I mean, working in games for as long as I have, it's just the artists are always the artists, right? And you hang out with these brilliant programmers, right?
Yeah.
And they can make you feel dumb sometimes. Right? So I don't think artists are dumb, but Torger was the dumb one.
Yeah.
Right. And she made sculptures and like to paint, I made them pretty.
Yeah.
Gatka was the smart one.
Yeah.
She was the most powerful of the spellcasters, right? She had a high intelligence, right? And she wrote rhymes and, she's still creative, but, she was she fancied herself a poet or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I get that. Yeah.
Right. And then Bazar was the tough one.
Yeah.
Right. Like she wasn't dumb, but she wasn't smart.
Right.
And, she wasn't like super,
she wasn't an artist. She
was the one that would have thrown down and pulled out that big axe.
Yeah.
If the opportunity
time came for it.
If the time came for it. So she was the one that was the most powerful overall.
Right.
So I wanted her minions to be a little more like, fantastic, right?
Yeah.
She had her
she had the skeleton.
Yeah, she had her skeleton minions that she had sculpted essentially out of.
It's something that I think we talked about this between last session and now. But
I guess they were all kind of artistic though,
Well, she's making sculptures, right? Yeah, exactly. There was the first campaign in Valengard. One of the big encounters I remember was that dust method, which kind of blew my mind. I was not expecting
string face,
right? And he had kind of created this. He had taken a dwarf skeleton, right, and was animating him almost like a marionette. And we didn't even know the method existed. We were the skeleton is talking to us, and it was this crazy encounter where we're trying, much like the hags. We didn't know what was really going on. Is this an animated skeleton talking to us? Is this like a magic mouth type thing where it's doing something what it's programmed to do? And then there's a reveal where it's actually. And so I thought it was interesting that you use that same, again, there's like a Phil Robb brand, right? In the next session, in the next campaign, instead of a dust method, it was 3 hags. And that you went from 1 character to 3, and they all had wildly different personalities. And I hope people go, maybe we can find a timestamp and go check out the encounter with Basra, because like that whole that whole thing with the skull was so awesome. It was so much fun. And it did feel like, scripted and theatrical, right? But I don't know how you would do that any other way, right? It didn't seem like you were playing an NPC and you were just improvising off of what we were doing. It was like, no. There's certain beats that you're going to hit as a character. And I was like, this is great. Like, how would you do this any other way other than kind of write it all down and have the prop ready? Well,
and you notice like I ran out of rhymes for Gatka, right?
But there was also certain I remember trying to figure out, can we, I'm not realizing they were hags. Can we get these kids to stop testing us and start relating to us? And no, the answer was that was not on the table.
Nope.
But we still tried.
That's part of the fun there, right? I present you guys with these critters that you would never dream of harming.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But then, you make them kind of like, wait, these things are kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know, maybe. And what I was really curious to see, right? Because I realized that this could happen, right? And so I had these 3, right? The first one, would be the one that took you most off guard.
Right.
Right. But then
the one that was most plausible. She was the most plausible, right? Yeah.
And then after the rats, right, getting into the bats. And I thought, okay, well, there is a chance they may attack her like preemptively, right? Because they know like there's something wrong here. Right? But I wasn't sure. I was really curious to see if when you guys got to Basra, if you'd just be like, fuck these kids.
No, we weren't. We were still, I think, partially because I was still hooked on the idea that
they were actually kids.
That they were, I knew there was something going on, but I didn't know what, but that they might be kids left over. When we started to kind of imagine that maybe Torgra was the actual real kid and the other two were something unusual that were manipulating her. Yeah. There was an intense kind of, it's funny because I compare you somewhat glibly. I compare you with like that Jim Henson presentation in the sense that you do all these crazy voices and you like to contort your body to kind of represent what this character looks like. But also Jim Henson's stuff, again, Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, is very heavily fairy tale based. Yeah. And that was the logic.
Hags, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the logic of what you were doing was the perfect fairy tale. Like everything's done in threes, right? There's 3 different hags, right? There's 3 bears and they each had their own flavor. Yeah. And it was a puzzle. They were trying to trick us. They were trying to manipulate us.
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked on us.
I mean, I didn't come up with that. Like, I mean, if you read Volo's Guide.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know, they have a whole section about hags and I mean, and even in fairy tales, that's the way hags are, right?
Well, there's the 3 fates.
Striking a bargain with the hags is not really a good thing to do, right? And the other thing was, finding when you find hag treasure, like be careful.
Be careful, yeah.
Because, right? And you guys found out.
Yeah. Then there's and now we're cursed. Yeah. But also that notion I remember from Clash of the Titans, the original Clash of the Titans. Yeah, the idea of that they have like one eyeball between them and they're passing it around. And so that's when I was starting to key off of the fact that they might be hags. Because I was like, I wonder. That's when I was asking, is there some kind of like fetish that they might have that they're trying to share? And that whole thing was it was great. I'm glad that we streamed it because I'm glad people get to see that. Yeah. Because
that was fun.
It was a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, I had a great time playing those NPCs. Like I said, I'm glad we'll get to see them again. I think we'll see them in a very different context next time. But the other thing, I mean, they'll probably be more powerful the next time you see them too.
So we've talked about what happened in the first 3 episodes. We talked about what behind the scenes, what your plans were and how you think they went. And it seems like even before we had started the 3rd session, you were already jonesing to continue this whole thing. I think you said something in chat about how I hope we get to hang out with these characters more.
Oh yeah. I love these characters, right?
Yeah, they're great.
I mean, I thought they're cool dwarves, right? They're funny, but not like stupid, goofy, right? You're not like rolling your eyes, right?
Well, some of us are more stupid than others, right? There's a range. There's a range of goofiness and there's a range of seriousness.
Right. But I mean, I think that's fine because I mean, Lars makes up for that in spades.
Absolutely does.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
He's the Jerry Seinfeld of the bunch, right? Like just rolling his eyes at all the antics.
There is a lot of that, yeah. But that's one of the reasons that we're friends. One of the reasons it's important for me that he's in the game is because there's a lot of different kinds of players out there, and I want people to see those people who are like Lars, those people who roll their eyes at that stuff, those people who focus on tactics rather than role playing. That that there is a place for them at the table. Yeah, it doesn't all have to be Matt O'Driscoll being kind of crazy over the top role playing.
Yeah, I will say this: like Lars actually put some thought into his backstory, which I thought was super cool.
That's cool.
He said like, oh, I want to be a member of the Pact, and I was like, oh, sweet, right? And that's why I put Balric in there.
Yep.
Right? I was like, oh, so I'll give him a chance to meet Balric. I wish that I had planned a little bit of time for him to interact with that character.
Balric was our friend Tom, who plays Copper's character in the first campaign.
Right. And he basically was a member of the Pact, a low-ranking member of the Pact that was there when basically the Pact was wiped out. Yep. And he was the last one, and the High Vindicator gives him
it's a book, or wasn't it like a tome?
Yeah,
it's kind of
I forget what I called it.
Right.
It's like the Grudge or something like that.
I remember.
No, it's not the Grudge,
but I remember it was something like that.
Whatever it is, but as his mentor and leader is dying, he goes, "You're the last one.
Yeah,
you're the High Vindicator now, right?" And we sort of left it there, and I don't know what Tom wanted to do with that.
Sure, yeah,
right. But I thought it would be cool if, I think Balric would be happy to see that, oh, shit, there's another one that survived, right? Yeah. So I would have liked to have given him some time to sort of like delve into that, maybe next time. What I did do was I took the history, Balric's history, right? and I basically changed all the words to sound as if Balric was telling.
Oh, I get it.
Ragnar his story.
That's
right.
Cool.
So I remember it like it was yesterday.
Right, that's cool.
And so like, and I gave that to Lars to read. I was like, well, we're not going to really have a chance to role play this out, but here, this will give you some backstory, and then maybe we can continue it the next time we play.
So you're already thinking about the next.
I already
chapter.
know what the adventure is.
That's awesome.
Right. I mean, I think it's probably maybe a 3 or 4 parter.
Well, we've talked about,
and I think you guys are going to leave Valengard.
What do you mean leave Valengard? Like
you're going to go like down into the more civilized lands.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
And because you're going to have to. I mean,
no spoilers.
No, it's not spoilers. I don't. I mean, you guys are going to have to track these hags down.
That's true. Yeah, correct.
Right?
Yes.
If you want to get rid of this curse,
yeah,
right.
We don't even know how the curse manifests.
Not yet.
The last thing that happened was Basra cursed us all and then fled. Right. And I knew that. I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. But there's so far we haven't used any of our abilities or anything.
Right.
So there's been no mechanical. We just don't feel right. We know we've been cursed.
There's just something in the back of your head that feels off, and you've had those days, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Are you
where you're just
all the time?
I just don't feel right.
Yeah,
you know, and that's what it feels like. I'm looking forward to actually you guys finding out, and then on top of that, Justin has to get rid of his curse. He's doubly cursed.
That's true. He was glamored. He was he fell for a I thought that was amazing because I don't know when the last time I saw like a legit cursed item was, but you did an amazing job of describing it. This is when things are working on me as a player. This is true if I'm in a theater, like if I'm watching a movie. If everything's working on me, the critical part of my brain is not on, right? And that's
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So it's like
I can watch a horrible movie and be entertained, and go out and be like, "Whoa, what the hell was that shit?"
So when you were describing the sword, I completely bought it.
The hammer.
This hammer. I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's right.
This when you were describing this, the ultimate weapon of Moradin, right? This it was really like even Tom Schmuck pointed out how you said the language you used was telling, but not revealing, right? And when we went back and thought about it, it's like, oh yeah, he said, you're convinced that this is this, that, and the other thing. But I completely bought it. I think most of us did that there was
that was awesome.
Some crazy dope ass matter because it made perfect sense, right? It's the finale of the session. This certainly is the weapon that's going to help us defeat the hags, right? So we were primed to find this awesome thing. And was it random who was going to find it? I assume.
Yeah, whoever would have opened that chest first would have whoever opened the box, the inner box would have been immediately glamored, right? And I have found the hammer of Moradin, right? Basically the progenitor of the dwarven race.
Yes,
I have his hammer. Right. I was a little worried that you guys would be like, there's no way you're going to give us this at 5th level.
Well, I mean, it probably helped that there is, as far as I know, it wasn't like we found the axe of the Dwarvish Lords, right? Which is a famous actual magic item. If that had happened, I would have been like, hang on a minute, we're only 5th level, right? But it was something that you had made up, and so I was like, oh yeah, I was willing to believe that it was not that useful as a magic weapon, that it might be just of historical value. So I was I 100%.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, so when you revealed that it was just a shillelagh, it was just a stick, I was like, "This is amazing."
It was a shitty old carpenter's hammer.
Yeah, shitty. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was so awesome. I was like, "This is the best."
And I've got this image in my head of Helldust like bursting out with a flourish, out of that room, brandishing this hammer, thinking she's brandishing like this amazing, glowing, gem encrusted, like mythical weapon. Yeah. And it's just fucking carpenter's hammer.
Not a great one. It's an old beat up carpenter's hammer.
Huh? Yeah. And to Justin's credit, he rolled with it. Yeah, he didn't try to meta out of it. Nope. Right. And I talked to him about this morning in the kitchen. I was like, dude, that was awesome. Like a lot of players would have been like, okay, how am I going to meta my way out of this?
Well, a lot of players, especially I think when,
or they would have been mad.
They would have been mad. Hey, wait a minute. What happened to this? That sucks. I thought I had a cool weapon. Hey, I was tricked. That's not fun. And also, this is, a lot of people, I think, depending on the tradition you're from, a lot of people would feel like I deserved more of a chance to notice that this was not the real thing. But Justin just completely rolled with it. And you could tell that the light was going on or had gone on over his eyes regarding what can be done here at the table.
Oh, yeah.
And playing along with some of this crazy stuff, even when it makes your character look foolish, is a big part of the fun.
The kudos to him. In fact, I'll probably give him inspiration for that when we start.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, you already are aware of what the next thing in Valengard is going to be, but I'm surprised.
The next adventure.
The next adventure, yeah. And I'm surprised because I had been trying to goad you into running in some case. And so like on stream, off stream, I didn't care. But we had so much fun playing in that first campaign. I was like, I hope this hasn't put the bullet in the head of that. We get to do it again.
Nah.
And there was a lot of like, I don't know if I have time. I don't know how I feel about streaming, which I completely get. There's no like, this is a very weird thing to do. So anyone who doesn't want to do it, I get. So I was astonished and delighted to discover that not only were you having fun and you were like, oh, I can't wait for this week. Oh man, I did this crazy encounter. You guys are going to love it. You were also, even before the third session, you were looking forward to the next chunk of content for Valengard, but you're also like, hey, do you guys want to play Wild West Cthulhu? So we had a whole thing about you ordered the Wild West Cthulhu books, and do you think that's going to happen between now and the next Valengard, or do you think that we're going to do the next Valengard?
We'll see. We'll see. Because I think I'm going to try running my kids through a couple of the practice adventures to sort of learn the system, because I don't think anyone at the table is going to know, and somebody at the table needs to know how it works.
Sure.
So I might try doing something at lunch at work or something like that, just to get my feet wet in that system. Supposedly it's, once you know it, it's a simpler system. I don't know. We'll find out.
I think it's the 5th edition or 7th edition of basic role playing. Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
And this is something set in the Wild West, which I think is pretty cool.
Right. I mean,
I played Cthulhu a million. I played like there's a famous epic Mountains of Madness huge tome adventure that I played in the 90s. I think we got maybe 20% of the way into it before crunch time happened or whatever. But so I have some ancient familiarity with it.
Right. Well, nice thing is, like, it's pretty easy to forget about this shit.
Oh yeah. Look, I mean the cameras and the mics and stuff.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, when we were playing, I lost, I lost the notion that I'm on camera.
Well, that makes me really happy, right? Because I wouldn't want you to feel like it would have been better if not for my awareness of the cameras. So the fact that you had a great time and you weren't even conscious of it.
Now, I don't go back and watch myself because I think that could potentially spoil it. Like if I like watch myself being a fool, right?
Do you ever go back and watch the stream afterward, whenever we're playing? I do all the time.
No, I never have, not once.
It's a lot of fun.
There was one that I watched I watched the first half of the Valengard one, and I got it to about halfway, and I was like, okay, this is pretty good stuff. And I was like,
I mostly watch for chat because our community is so awesome.
Well, that's the other thing is, like, in my experience, everyone that I've interacted with from this community has been pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like, I haven't gotten any, like early on, I think on Reddit, there was, I went and I read some posts that were kind of like a little, I thought, overly critical of what we were doing.
Yeah, well.
And I sort of like, okay, I'm not going to read Reddit anymore. If that's the case.
I think that,
since I've been back, I'm like, oh, it's actually, there's no more of that shit.
Correct. I think it's because before we started streaming, it was the people watching were, they didn't know, they maybe they watched my videos, but they hadn't seen me run before, even though we had streamed it before. They hadn't seen me run before, or maybe they just knew about the Kickstarter, right? They knew about the Kickstarter. They bought Strongholds and Followers. They didn't know anything about my world, my setting. And just the fact that we raised all that money and built this crazy thing, a whole bunch of people tuned in who were not part of the community. And so, and which is good. That's how you build an audience. You build an audience by getting those people to tune in.
But at this point, everyone who's still
now, everybody who's left are they're the people who get it. They're the people who get it and they like the content and they like us. And so you can go in, like, you've been in the Discord talking to people about what was coming up and stuff. It's an amazing resource having those people. We have amazing moderators who work their butts off to make sure that everything's cool. But that's the fun part for me of going back and watching is it's not necessarily seeing us. It's remembering those amazing moments from the session and then going back and seeing chat's reaction to it. Because people love that stuff.
No, I mean, and not that I shy away from criticism. I mean, sometimes criticism's super useful. But like nobody's like mean or derisive, or like they don't. I haven't seen anyone like making fun of anyone on the stream or the way like somebody looks. Or
we used to have when we had a larger general audience of people that didn't know who we were. We got that, but we persevered, and those people are like they didn't like what they saw, so they left.
Right.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And so now the people who are left are super cool. And yeah, that's for me a big part of the fun of going back and rewatching stuff.
Yeah.
Is that the audience is awesome. Well, Phil, I really appreciate you doing this. I hope that this interview process was fun.
No, yeah, I like talking about D&D.
Awesome. It's great. I hope that I hope like my plan for the chain is that we run for another 5 or 6 sessions and then we wrap up book 1 and hopefully we put a bow on it so it feels like it's the end of the first book in an epic series and then my goal is to take like 3 or 4 months off and there's no obligation that we're going to do something on Wednesday nights. Maybe I'll just like at the worst case scenario stream NetHack. But there are other people who've talked about running stuff and so it creates this space for other people to do stuff. So it'd be great to play some more Valengard. It'd be great. I think it'd be great to just see anyone run anything other than D&D. It might be me. It could be somebody else. And Cthulhu is really cool and popular.
Yeah. I mean, I love that mythos. So, I mean, I've played it a couple times and really enjoyed myself.
That's going to be real interesting because it's a very different, like I think I've talked to maybe Lars or Anna. I don't remember who. And I'll probably keep my mouth shut about it to everybody else. But that notion that like, you don't win.
No, you don't.
Cthulhu is
you got to be okay with your characters dying because they're going to die or they'll go insane.
Correct. Yeah, you're inevitably going to either. There's nothing you can do. Your character is either going to die or go insane.
Yep.
It's inevitable. It's not heroic.
Right.
Or another way of putting it is to say it's a kind of very different kind of heroism.
Right, because you're playing a normal dude.
You're playing a normal person with no special abilities.
Yeah.
You're just an investigator. You're going to be exposed to crazy stuff. It's going to drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just a question of how you deal with that that determines what makes you kind of a hero.
Yeah.
And that's something that's super different from D&D. So that's kind of why I'm interested in seeing that play out. Plus, I know how much you love that Wild West era, right? And so as
spaghetti Western with the a deep one.
What could be better? Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty awesome.
So I hope we get to do that. Phil, thanks for coming by. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope this was interesting, and I hope I get a chance to do it again with some other folks. Until next time, peace out. How good was that? Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want an alert when new videos go up, there is a little bell icon below the video you can click on. If you want to support the channel, we do have a Patreon. We also have a store where you can come by and pick up a cool new shirt and also a copy of Strongholds and Followers if you do not already have one. I do intend on doing more interviews like this. Until next time, peace out.